Elise's room was a box of shadows, walls painted a dull flat grey. They seemed to swallow any light that dared to enter. Sunlight tried. It peeked through the gap in the heavy curtains. But the grey always won. It was a colour that didn't speak. It just sat there, heavy, like a secret. Her room felt like a forgotten song, a melody no one remembered how to play anymore. It was her sanctuary, her prison. The only real colour came from the posters, faded posters of long-dead composers. Beethoven, Mozart, Chopin. Their eyes stared down, stern, judging, or maybe just sad, like they understood the grey, understood the silence. Her grand piano, a polished black beast, sat in the corner. It was usually closed, its keys hidden, like teeth holding back a scream or a whisper. It waited, patiently, for a touch that rarely came with joy anymore. Dust motes danced in the single beam of weak afternoon light. They were the only things moving freely. Everything else was still, heavy, weighted down. Her bed was a tangle of grey sheets, a rumpled landscape of sleepless nights. On stage, Elise was a different person, a shining star. Her fingers flew across the piano keys. Magic, that's what they called it. The local newspaper used words like prodigy, gifted, a once-in-a-generation talent. She wore bright dresses. Sequins sparkled under the hot stage lights. A smile, carefully practiced, adorned her face. It reached her eyes. Almost. She knew how to look the part of the successful young pianist. Applause thundered after every performance. A wave of sound. It washed over her, but it never quite reached the shore where she lived, inside. Trophies lined the shelves in the living room. Gold, silver, gleaming under the soft lamplight. Her parents polished them, proudly. They were symbols of her success, her dedication, her hard work, proof that she was okay, that everything was fine, better than fine, perfect. She won competitions, received scholarships, invitations to play with small orchestras arrived. Her future seemed bright, paved with ivory keys and concert halls. Inside Elise's head, it was never quiet, not really. There was a voice, a constant companion. It wasn't kind, it wasn't supportive, it was the critic, the judge, the jury. It whispered after a flawless performance. The voice was relentless. It found fault in every note, every chord, every silence between the sounds. It was a shadow that followed her, even into her dreams. The voice would hiss. It chipped away at her confidence, little by little, day by day. The praise from others felt like sand, slipping through her fingers, meaningless. Only the voice's criticism stuck, hard, sharp, like a shard of glass. It knew her fears, it knew her weaknesses, it used them against her, always. Sometimes the voice used her parents' words. At school, Elise was an enigma. Quiet, reserved, but known for her music. Teachers would ask her to play at assemblies, holiday concerts, special events. She always said yes. It was easier than saying no, easier than explaining. The students would watch, some with admiration, some with a detached curiosity. She was the piano girl, a label, a box. It kept her separate, safe in a way, but also very alone. She ate lunch by herself, often in the music room, if it was empty. The piano there was old, out of tune. But it was company. Sometimes a classmate would approach. They'd say. She'd offer a small smile, a nod. The words felt hollow. They didn't know. They couldn't see beyond the notes she played, beyond the carefully constructed facade. She was a ghost in the hallways, a melody no one truly heard. Home was a different kind of quiet, not the peaceful kind, but the kind filled with unspoken things. Her parents were busy, work, responsibilities. They loved her, she knew that, in their way, but they didn't see the shadows, or maybe they didn't know how to ask about them. Dinner was often eaten with the television on, a distraction, filling the spaces where conversation might have been, to fade into the grayness of her room.
The annual Spring Gala. It was the biggest local event, a showcase for young talent. Elise was the headline act, as always. She'd chosen a complex Chopin piece, one she used to love. Now, practicing it, felt like dragging stones uphill. Her hands trembled, her mind wandered, and the notes blurred on the page. The inner critic was having a field day.
You're not ready, you'll embarrass yourself, everyone will know.
The night of the gala arrived, cold, damp, matching her mood. Backstage, the usual buzz felt distant, muffled. She wore a pale blue dress. It felt like a costume for a role she no longer wanted to play. Her parents gave her a tight hug.
Break a leg, sweetheart.
Their smiles were bright, oblivious, or perhaps willfully ignorant. She nodded. Her own smile felt like cracking glass, fragile, about to shatter. She walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding. The silence of the expectant audience was a physical weight. She sat at the grand piano, took a breath, or tried to. Her fingers hovered over the keys. They felt alien, cold. She began to play. The first few bars were hesitant, shaky. Then, a mistake. A wrong note, glaring, obvious. Her heart pounded. The car ride home was a tomb of silence. Her parents didn't speak. She didn't speak. What was there to say? The shame was a thick blanket, suffocating her. The memory of the discordant notes, the shocked faces in the audience. It played on a loop in her mind. The inner critic was triumphant.
I told you so, you're nothing.
Each word was a hammer blow, driving her further into the darkness. She locked herself in her gray room. The silence here was different now. It wasn't just heavy, it was menacing. The shadows seemed to writhe, to whisper. The composers on the wall, their eyes accused her.
You disgraced us. You disgraced the music.
She sank to the floor. Tears finally came, hot, bitter. They weren't enough to wash away the pain, the humiliation, the utter desolation. She felt empty, scooped out. The thought came, quietly at first, a whisper in the storm of her emotions.
What if it all just stopped?
The pain, the pressure, the voice, the endless struggle, the idea took root, grew stronger. It offered a perverse kind of comfort. It was her mother. She found Elise. Not in time to stop the despair, but in time to stop the irreversible. The sight of her daughter, so lost, so broken, it shattered the wall of their unspoken anxieties. For the first time, the silence in their home was broken by raw, honest emotion, tears, fear, and a desperate, clinging hope. That night was a blur, flashing lights, muffled voices, the cold sterility of a hospital. The days that followed were slow, measured, like learning a new piece of music, one note at a time. There were doctors, therapists, gentle voices asking hard questions. Questions she had never dared to ask herself. It was terrifying to speak the truth, to voice the pain. The inner critic still whispered. But now, there were other voices too. Voices of understanding, of support, of patience. Therapy was hard work, unearthing buried feelings, confronting the fears, learning to challenge the critic, learning that her worth was not tied to a perfect performance or a golden trophy. Her parents learned too. They learned to listen, really listen. Not just to the music, but to the silences. Recovery is not a straight line, it's a winding path, full of ups and downs, good days, bad days. Elise learned this. She learned to be patient with herself, to celebrate small victories, like getting out of bed, or talking about her feelings, or even just breathing through a moment of panic. The music started to return, slowly, differently. Not as a demand, but as a companion. A way to express the things words couldn't reach. She started composing again, small, simple melodies, reflecting her journey. Some were sad, some were hopeful. All of them were honest. She played for herself, in her room, sometimes with the curtains open, letting the sunlight touch the keys. The golden trophies still sat in the living room, but they didn't gleam with the same pressure anymore. They were just objects. Reminders of a past, not a definition of her future.
Elise's story is not unique. Many people wear masks. They project an image of success, of happiness, of having it all together, while inside they are fighting silent battles, struggling with demons no one else can see.